now that we have our seafood stock all done and it's beautifully aromatic, we're going to start with the rest of the bisque. First thing that we're going to do is just chop up these shrimp. I'm just going to put them right into the food processor because we want a fine mince, and there's no reason that we should have to work harder than we have to. That's perfect. They're all ground up. We're just going to take them right over to the stove and we're going to give them a quick saute. Now I've preheated my pot over medium-high heat. You're going to know when your pot is ready when you place your hand about an inch from the pot's surface and the heat is radiating up from the pot. That's when you want to add your oil. Just going to add a little bit of grapeseed oil here, just to cover the bottom of the pan, just a couple of teaspoons. You're going to see the viscosity of the oil change almost immediately. Reduce your heat then to medium. Now to do this, I'm going to put my finger, my middle finger, into the hole in the bottom of the bowl to hold down the blade because you don't want that plopping into your pot. And you can very easily move the blade around the pan with your spatula. There we go. And you just want to move it around the pan a little bit just to get it started with cooking. It's kind of the same idea as when you're sauteing ground beef in a pan, breaking up the chunks. And once you get a little bit of an opaque color on the shrimp, you're going to pour in the broth. Now just give it a nice stir. Now I'm going to add my spices. A little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of white pepper, just a little dash of sea salt. Stir that all in. And just a 1/4 cup of tomato paste. Now when you first put the tomato paste in, you're going to think that it is never, ever going to mix in with the rest of the soup. But just keep stirring and it will. That big block of tomato paste will dissipate. Now we're just going to cover it for about 10 minutes to let it simmer together, and then we're going to set it aside to cool so that we can puree it and finish the soup with coconut milk. Now what I opted to do was to cool my soup in the freezer for what I call a quick cool. I just poured it from the pot into a bowl and put it in the freezer to cool for a couple of hours. It's still got some warmth on it, but it's cool enough for me to handle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to puree it in the blender. I've removed the cap from the top just so it can release any steam that may be left. I'm going to fill this just about 3/4 of the way, and certainly not more than that. Lock down that top and give it a spin. Now you'll notice that I started at a slow speed just so my soup wouldn't come flying out of the top of the blender. So I'm pouring it back into my pot, and we're just going to repeat the process here. And once again, start slowly. Last bit into the pot. Now we're just going to go over to the stove and thicken it up with some coconut milk. Now I've turned my heat onto about medium-high. I'm going to place that pot right over it and let it get a little simmer going. I've got a couple of teaspoons of arrowroot and a can of low-fat coconut milk. So this is totally dairy-free. If you happen to be allergic to coconut milk, I do have one friend that is, I would just use low-fat condensed milk. Just give it a little stir in, just to get the process started. You always should stir things like arrowroot. All thickeners should be stirred into cold liquids as opposed to hot. Then you can put it into a hot liquid and you'll be just fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour that into the soup. That's a really gorgeous color. And give it a good whisk. Just want to get all of the liquid moving around so that arrowroot will smooth out and your soup will thicken. I'm just going to give it about 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, simmering, stirring occasionally until it all thickens up. Now this bisque smells absolutely wonderful. It's done now, so what we're going to do is we're going to move it over to the work surface and plate it. Now what I've done is I've put together an adorable little presentation. I always like putting a little napkin under a nice clear bowl on a little white plate just to make whomever I'm serving soup to feel special. Got a little bit of tarragon here to garnish with. You can use any herb that you like. I just happen to have tarragon today. So I'm just going to spoon some of my wonderful bisque into the bowl. There we go. And I'm just going to take a little bit of tarragon and just break it up on top. Just give it a little green on top of that lovely kind of bricky orange bisque color. There you have it. Shrimp bisque that's totally, totally dairy-free. Smells delicious. I'm going to go give it to my guests. Thank you for joining me today at Nina Cucina. I'll see you next time.